What is the difference between a bid and a fee estimate for professional services? I made a post on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago, and I think it was misunderstood by several people, which means I probably didn't communicate clearly. But I told people that I don't provide bids. When clients call and ask for a bid on a survey, we usually tell them, we're sorry, we don't submit bids. So some people misunderstood that. They thought what that meant was that I only worked on time and materials basis. In other words, I only billed the client, would only work for a client if I could bill them for every hour I worked. That is not true. In fact, the majority of the work that we provide is done on what we call a lump sum basis. So that means I provide the client with a fixed fee. Okay, but it's always as part of what I call professional scope of services, right? Or it always goes with the professional scope of services. And I never submit a proposal where I know all the client wants is the lowest price, right? And that's usually what they mean when they say bid, right? They're trying to get the cheapest price they can find. So what I wanted to do a short video that talked about what are the differences between a bid, in air quotes, and a fee estimate for professional services, which is what you should get from a land surveyor. So I'm going to give you, let's see, I think I got three. I'm going to give you three differences between a bid and a fee estimate for professional services. That's part of a proposal for professional services that you should get from a land surveyor. Okay, because I think it's important for people to understand the difference. And so, yes, at RH we do provide lump sum fees, fixed fees. In fact, that's 95% of our fees are fixed fees. But we don't provide low bids. So I want you guys to understand the difference. Okay, so a bid is something that you get for a service that can be well defined and understood by the buyer ahead of time. And what that means is you typically don't need a written scope of services. So if it's a bid, if you're trying to get a bid, then the buyer should have a full understanding of exactly what they need before they go to get pricing. Okay. A fee estimate, in contrast to that, a fee estimate for professional services is always provided with a scope of services, a written scope of services, after some kind of needs assessment has been done and an approach to the project has been agreed upon. Okay, so I'm going to dive into that a little bit because it's really important. So if it's a bid, that's it. All people care about is the price. Just give me a number, right? If it's a fee estimate for professional services, you need more information to understand the price, right? It's a little more complicated. It's not cut and dry, right? So you can't understand a fee estimate for professional services if the professional hasn't talked to you about what you're trying to do and what your needs are, what your level of risk tolerance is, and if they haven't provided a written scope of services that explains what they are and aren't going to do. And after you and the professional have agreed on how you're going to approach the project, because there's usually different ways to approach projects. Okay, so that's one difference between a bid and a fee estimate. With a bid, the buyer knows exactly what they want ahead of time. With a fee estimate for professional services, they're approaching the professional with some idea of what they're trying to accomplish, but they need the professional's help to figure out exactly what needs to be done. Okay, so I'll give you a quick example. I want my grass cut twice a month, my front lawn, right? That is something I could probably go get a bid for, right? I've cut lots of lawns in my day. I understand how a lawnmower and a weed eater work. I know exactly how much yard I have. I could have 3 or 4 guys come by, look at my yard, and give me a bid to do that on a monthly basis. Now, I probably still wouldn't pay for that service based on a bid because I'm more worried about a guy that's going to take good care of my yard, or a gal take good care of my yard. But that's the kind of thing you could probably get a bid for. Okay, if you want an architect to design you a custom home, that is not going to be the kind of thing that you want to go get with a low bid, right? Because there's a whole lot involved in that process, and you need to talk to the architect needs to talk to you, understand what you're trying to accomplish, understand your budget, your tolerance for risk, the kind of architectural styles you like and the kind you don't like, and then he needs to come up with an approach to the design. It's probably going to be an iterative process, so on and so forth. So that's not the kind of thing you can do with a bid. Okay, the second thing that makes a bid different from a fee estimate for professional services is a bid can be used when costs are easily calculated and predictable. Okay, so bids work for what we call, transactions that are fairly low risk. So for example, if you're a builder, you might say, I need this many 2x4s delivered by this date to this address. Okay, that is something that you could probably do with the bid, right? If you specify the quality of the 2x4s, you could say, I want this kind of 2x4, I want Douglas fir 2x4s, grade X, delivered to this address at this date. Okay, that's those costs can be calculated fairly easily, right? As long as there's a reasonably short time horizon. You know what 2x4s cost this week. You know how much fuel and labor it's going to take to deliver the 2x4s. That's something that you could probably get with a bid. Here's another example. Lay this many blocks for this retaining wall at this location by this date. If you give the bricklayer some information on the type of bricks that are going to be used and some details about the retaining wall, how long it is, how tall it is, you can probably get a bid for that work, right? The costs are fairly predictable there, okay? You can figure out what each brick costs, you can figure out what the labor is to lay each brick, and you can come up with some pretty reasonable costs, okay? So if you can use unit costs, what we call unit costs for your materials and your labor, then a bid might work, okay? So how is that different from a fee estimate for professional services? So fee estimate for professional services should be used when the costs are unpredictable and when risk needs to be shared between the consultant and the client. Okay, or where you've got a situation where you need to phase a project to manage the risk. Okay, so I'll use a survey example. If you hire me to do a boundary survey, I don't know what I'm going to find when I go to do the field survey of your property, right? Even if you have a property that's been mapped and the property corners have been set, I don't know if they're still there. So there's some risk there, right? I don't know what I'm going to find when I go out to do your survey. Okay, so what that means is you and I have to negotiate how we're going to handle some of that uncertainty in our scope, right? Now, I can take on all that uncertainty, but that means my price is going to be higher. Okay, or we might do a situation where I say, hey, I'm going to go out and spend a day and look for your corners. It's going to cost this much. If I don't find them, we got to go back to the negotiating table because I have additional work that I need to do now, right? So that's a situation where the costs aren't predictable, right? There's uncertainty, and almost everything you do as a land surveyor or private land planner involves that kind of risk, right? And so one of the reasons I don't give bids is because if I give you a bid, I'm lying to you about the risk and uncertainty involved in the process, right? That's something that you and I have to have an honest conversation about because whether we like it or not, you and I, if we go into business together on a project, we are going to share that risk. And so we have to talk about how that's going to be done. Okay, here's the third difference between a bid and a fee estimate for professional services. Bids are used when the customer can easily evaluate quality. Okay, so if the customer isn't qualified to understand the quality of the deliverable, then a bid's not going to work. Okay, and here's why. If you can't understand the quality of what you're going to pay for, then that gives the consultant an opportunity to cut corners. And if you're getting a bid, people will cut corners. Okay, so just as an example, we put together a really good survey product, I think a survey work product, but I've seen lots of maps from our competitors that they just are garbage, right? But the problem is your average person that's engaged as a buyer in a real estate transaction or a land development project doesn't understand that. They don't know the difference between a garbage survey and a quality survey, right? And so that's why instead of going out to find work on low bid, you want to hire a reputable professional to do your work, right? Somebody that's worked hard to build a good reputation and a good branding. Okay, so bids are used when the customer can easily evaluate quality. A fee estimate with a scope of professional services should be used when the client has to trust the consultant for good quality. In other words, if you're not going to be able to judge whether or not the consultant's doing a good job, you don't want a bid. You want a fee for professional services because you are going to have to put some trust into the consultant and trust that the consultant is going to do a good job. And man, I have seen that work out. When you go out to hire that consultant or that professional based on low bid, I've just seen that work out bad so many times, right? So I'm not saying that price doesn't matter. Price does matter. And one of the things we try to work really hard at my company, Redefine Horizons, is to provide good value, and we try and provide affordable fees. In fact, we're very proud of our fees. We think our fees are very reasonable right? We're in a low-cost part of California with relatively low cost of living. We live pretty simple lives, the owners, and we don't live or work extravagantly, right? And so when we believe we provide that value to our clients, that's kind of part of our, we're country boys, and we take pride in that, in a simple life that's based on hard work. So price does matter, and getting good value matters. Okay, but the wrong way to get that value is with a low bid. For if you're talking to a land surveyor about a bid, you are setting yourself up for major problems, right? And one of the main reasons why is if you're trying to get a survey or surveying services on low bid, you're not having an honest conversation with the surveyor about risk, how that risk gets shared, and you're not giving the surveyor an opportunity to figure out what your needs really are and to guide you through the process of finding a good project approach and figuring out how to manage the risk and negotiating a reasonable fee for that expertise. So that's why we don't give bids. We're happy to give lump sum fee estimates attached to a professional scope of services, but we don't give potential clients bids. And I don't think any surveyors should give clients bids. I think it's a bad way to do business.